First of all, Seth is a young engineering student that happens to have Asperger's syndrome, which causes him to miss some indirect comments and causes difficulties to catch up on double meaning sentences or some expressions, among other attitudes. In the novel I Belong, a novel inspired by true events written by Suzzane K. Whang, the university he attends experienced a mortal bombing a year prior, meaning that the university community is still having difficulties and struggling with the shock and impact of the bomb by the time Seth enters university and is a freshman. At the point when one student confuses something that Seth says due to his Asperger's and report him to the organization, it says of a progression of occasions that takes steps to destroy his life and dreams, due to the fact that the administration of the university thinks that he could be a threat to the security of the other students, mainly because of the bomb impact by the other student a year ago and his rare behaviors that were discharged by the administration of the university. Because of this, Seth is suspended and roams the halls of a state mental hospital, fighting to gain his good reputation again, to be able to participate and win the defense system R&D competition.
We're going to discuss three main concepts on the video: microaggressions, covering, and allies. First of all, microaggressions are hurtful or hostile comments, behaviors, or misconceptions towards marginalized people. In the book, we constantly see how Seth is living microaggressions, since people consider him weird, say offensive comments, or even consider him a threat to the university's safety just because he has a neurological disorder such as Asperger's syndrome. Now, covering is a behavior in which marginalized people hide or conceal part of their identity to avoid rejection, making others uncomfortable, or being in the spotlight. It is also a detrimental behavior for these people, since it lessens the energy to make important activities just because they build up a persona. Although we are going to discuss this later on the video, we can see how Seth was covering part of his syndrome just because he wanted to be part of the university and to develop his snakebot. And finally, allies are an important part of the story, because Quan and other friends that Seth made represent the figures of diversity and inclusion, not only on the story but also in society. We'll explain it later on.
Now we'll see for an example how Seth was constantly forced to hide himself and wear a mask in order to be accepted by others. There was a situation when Seth and his teammates needed help to complete a robotics project they had. So they decided to go to a robotics conference near the city, hoping to get sponsorship from a company. In the conference, they found a company that was willing to help them and sponsor them so they could finish the project. But there was a problem. Seth thought that this company values weren't aligned with his own values and didn't agree with the election of the company. So he decided to express this disagreement to his teammates, but also to the person that was in charge of the company and that was going to help them. So Seth's teammates get angry and ask him to stay quiet and keep his opinion to his own. But Seth thinks that this is really important and he keeps talking and expressing himself. So eventually, the teammates get really angry and ask him to stay outside of the building. So they basically kick him out of the negotiation. When Seth gets out, he asks for himself, "What did I say now that was so offensive?" he says. Human beings are so complicated, so emotional. And this shows how Seth is constantly forced to hide himself, his values, his opinions, to be accepted by others, in this case the teammates, but also shows how he can't really understand what's wrong with him. He just knows that he's doing something wrong and he needs to hide himself. And these situations are constantly happening in the story, where Seth thinks that he needs to wear a mask and hide himself just to be accepted by other parts of the society and feel that he is also a member of this society.
Disability inclusion means understanding the relationship between the way people function and how they participate in society, and making sure everybody has the same opportunities to participate in every aspect of life to the best of their abilities and desires, including people with disabilities in
everyday activities and encouraging them to have roles similar to their peers who do not have a disability involves more than simply encouraging people. It requires making sure that adequate policies and practices are in effect in a community or an organization. This inclusion should lead to increased participation in socially expected life roles and activities such as being a student, worker, friend, community member, patient, spouse, partner, or even a parent. These socially expected activities may also include engaging in social activities, using public resources such as transportation and libraries, moving about within communities, receiving adequate health care, having relationships, and enjoying other day-to-day activities. Some examples of microaggressions Seth suffered during the book were that his college classmates constantly annoyed him since he was weird, just like his professors constantly judged him to the limit of thinking that because of his illness or his social awkwardness, he could be dangerous.
Now, after understanding Seth's situation, we can see as a group that this type of people with this kind of personalities are not only found in our daily lives, but also in the media, movies, or series. In this particular case, we want to talk about Tyler, who is one of the characters of the Netflix original's 13 Reasons Why. And he is also portrayed as someone who is socially awkward, who is quiet, who is shy, and who tends to isolate from the rest of the people in his school. In fact, at the end of this season, he ends up shooting in prom night. And that's exactly the problem, because we tend to relate those type of behaviors with someone who is dangerous, and they are not necessarily true. There is no correlation. In fact, we don't know if he has some sort of condition like Seth's, which is Asperger's. But that is also something that we cannot say will always end up in being harmful. To conclude, we need to understand that these people hide or cover up exactly because they want to avoid being bullied, they want to avoid being target of microaggressions, and they don't want to feel different in a society which is already difficult for them.